Okay, I know you're probably sick of Anomaly, but like, there's another one, and I like these, so this will be the last one I do, and then the next couple videos will probably be like streams and Vintage 8, since I need to finish that. You guys wanted to see that. Alright, so this is these creatures transformed him into something impossible.
Travelers since the
Let's see
first
it.
time they saw him wandering around Maksimirska Avenue at number 3200 in the heart of Zagreb. It was never known how he ended up in such conditions, taking shelter from the sun's rays and the morning frosts in a huge blue canvas tent hidden in an alley. It
Okay.
was known from comments by avid specialists who frequented the clinic 2 blocks away that the traveler suffered from a condition called chronic delusional state of messianic character.
What?
The man believed himself to be a nautical traveler. In fact, he sometimes called himself
So does he have identity disorder? Does he have IDD?
the reincarnation of Marco Polo. Everything in his life
What?
revolved
The
around that. Even
reincarnation
the
of
tent that was
Marco
his
Polo?
refuge seemed clumsily to imitate the shape of the bow of an ancient ship.
What?
Next to him, one could sometimes see one or another stray dog, which disappeared as soon as the traveler had nothing left to eat. However, what never
Is that
left
not-
him was an old BlackBerry that the man used to consult in whispers, as if it were an intercommunicating compass.
Isn't a
With his
BlackBerry
sudden
a
death a
phone?
few days ago, it was impossible not to be shocked. Although he used to get involved in street fights and smell of fear, the neighbors had taken a certain liking to him. On a couple of occasions, he used his BlackBerry to prevent a robbery on
Yeah,
one
it's
of the
phone.
corners of Maksimirska Avenue, hitting the thief on the head. And that device now lay in my hands. As the traveler's last wish,
Huh?
the story of how it happened was somewhat sudden. I was coming out of the cafe in front of the office where I worked as an accountant for a company, as usual.
Yeah.
The traveler was running frantically, with a disturbed and terrified look on his face.
Okay.
Although apparently no one was chasing him, at least in the real world, he said to me in a voice so clear and with an accent that I would never have expected from a vagabond, "Do not let it fall into the wrong hands."
By the way, so he comes. So there's this wild, homeless man who has been documented to be doing strange things and be weird. Now runs up to this person, hands him his phone, and says, "Don't let it fall into the wrong people."
Never saw him again. The police declared him dead after finding a body floating in the river, which matched the few more detailed physical descriptions that existed of the traveler. The death certificate stated his cause of death as drowning, and his
So is something paranormal gonna happen to him? Is he just gonna be like running from something or someone, and somebody finally finds him and kills him? 'Cause that's
body
what it
had
seems like.
self-inflicted scratches from the neck to the sternum.
Self-inflicted.
No one claimed the body. Trusting the traveler's word before he left this world, I kept his BlackBerry on my bedroom desk. However, I felt the need to call the police and tell them what the man had said to me. Furthermore, I possessed one of the case's pieces of evidence.
Okay.
As often happens in these types of cases, as the officer who answered my call described it, sometimes there are deaths that nobody cares about, and cases that remain archived forever, with no relatives claiming them at all. The officer gave me
Yeah.
2 options regarding the BlackBerry. Either I kept it and nothing happened, or I handed it over to the police and still
Okay, I'm still curious on why this guy has never searched through the phone. Because if it was such a big deal to this homeless dude, why did you not go through the phone?
nothing happened, quite literally. I decided to respect the traveler's last wish and left it there in the drawer, waiting for the weekend to take a
So you haven't. Oh, okay, never mind. Hold on, I cut it off.
closer look at it. To the touch, it seemed like an ordinary mobile phone,
Okay, so he's
a
finally going
bit
through.
dirty, scratched on the back. Naturally, and as I expected, the battery was dead, so I got a cable from an acquaintance to charge it. It took an eternity to reach 50%, but at least it seemed like it still worked. After midnight, the phone finally finished charging, and I decided to turn it on, hoping not to find anything that would put me in an illicit position. The phone took its time to react. A rounded figure kept spinning around itself while gradually turning a subtle green. It was possibly the first time anyone had turned it on. So, About 20 or 30 minutes passed until the screen went black again. Exhausted and fed up with waiting, considering also that I had to wake up early the next day, I casually threw the phone into the drawer. There it stayed until early Thursday
I
morning.
want to point out, what is this background? Why are we looking at some? I'm supposing this is a homeless guy. Why are we looking at him right
A
now?
deafening electronic screech woke me up, and in my startled state, I remembered that the traveler's BlackBerry was still there, still
Yep.
powered on, trapped on my desk.
Yep.
I tried every possible way to stop the noise. I pressed all its buttons, especially the red one, which I assumed should turn it off, but nothing worked. The phone continued like this for a few minutes until it decided to stop. I couldn't tell if it was due to some special character combination or if it simply had some kind of automated alarm. But I did notice that on the huge screen, a map was drawn in black background and white lines with a flickering red dot in its center. I could
Tracker.
barely make out the street names, but none of them seemed familiar to me. At the bottom edge, also in very small letters, were two boxes. One was labeled Great Attractor and the other Anomaly of Indetermination. My first thought was that it might be some game native to the BlackBerry or some demonstration application of the new real-time
Yeah, I don't
geolocation
think so.
capabilities
I don't
that
think
had
so.
begun to become popular on mobile devices.
I think
But the
you're
interface
gaslighting
felt so
yourself.
strange that the idea of it being some kind of tutorial quickly vanished from my consciousness. Due to time constraints, I had to leave the phone in the drawer once again, but with the promise that I would come back to it later as soon as I clocked out of work.
Why wouldn't he just take it with him then?
There was only a map.
Okay, this sounds weird, but why wouldn't he just have taken it with him and then tried to figure out if the tracker was real or not? Because, and sure, you could be like, oh, well, what if it goes off when he's at work? Then he could really just get behind the mystery and be like, oh, I was he could just have some excuse. I don't know. I can't think of a generic excuse, but he could
And
find a
unlike the
generic
last time I
excuse.
saw it, this time it did indicate familiar coordinates, which happened to closely resemble those of my neighborhood. But something about it gave it an appearance that I struggled to fully recognize beyond the street names. I found it impossible to access any sort of menu, and likewise couldn't manage to turn off the mobile or use it outside of the map. That flashing red dot was now situated to one side, precisely at the intersection of the streets near my home. So I surmised that it was somehow showing me my position on the map. I confirmed this by stepping out onto the street and walking a few paces north, and the dot seemed to track my movements. Back in my room, I decided to research the geolocation features of BlackBerry devices, as well as any applications that might have certain similarities. But nothing. Not even in cases of malfunction did the map resemble that of the traveler's mobile, nor did it have the integrated dark mode that the newer models boasted. After staring at the map for a while, I became curious and decided to press the box labeled Great Attractor, simply because the other option, Indetermination Anomaly, didn't give me any ideas at all. When I pressed the box, nothing happened for about 30 seconds, until a notification in the middle of the screen displayed the following message: Follow your desires.
For what?
The phrase seemed as confusing as the entire situation, and apparently nothing on the screen had changed. Except for something I noticed the next night when I took the BlackBerry out of my desk drawer. On the map, much further north, there was another red dot, but it wasn't flashing. Since I didn't know the streets around that point, I couldn't tell if it marked any familiar location. So I thought of something that might help. I would take the BlackBerry to my office and try to determine the new points.
Okay, finally, because like, right, we know there's anomalies, right? And now he's going for the desires. And I'm assuming if the desires are actually his desires, or if it was the homeless man's desires, because it could be that, or it could be actual like an actual like entity or creature, but I don't think it is.
Relative
So let's
position
see.
to my house from there. It's worth noting that by then, the phone didn't seem to be running out of battery. The number of hours it had been on made me think that the map demanded very little energy from the phone. Contrary to what I thought, the point neither approached nor moved away when I reached my office. In fact, it disappeared. So, I had nothing to do but constantly check for its
Okay, that's
reappearance.
weird though that it just
But nothing.
is gone.
Nothing happened until I returned home, specifically when I entered my room. There, the point returned, in the exact same place where I first saw it. I thought with little conviction that perhaps it was something in my surroundings, something that was giving it some kind of energy, but I couldn't think of anything. I felt like it could be something like a puzzle, but it didn't make sense. It was just a damn cell phone from a simple vagabond in the city center. It was at that moment that I decided to go out to the balcony of my room, lit a cigarette, and stayed there watching the nighttime panorama of the city. Everything was so quiet, and the cold breeze of autumn was occasionally felt. Until I saw those shadowy figures, elongated and with a head that resembled a huge anvil. For a moment, I thought they might be some
You said with an anvil, but we're just seeing normal people here, just shadowed. Probably photoshopped in.
telecommunications towers. But I cleared my view a bit, and they still looked like organic figures, but in shadow. Both figures were motionless several blocks away on a building that stood out from the others. They must have been large enough for me to appreciate their shapes in such detail. I thought about checking the map on the BlackBerry. The scene was so strange that the first thing that came to mind was the most unusual thing that had happened to me in recent days. And there it was, the second red dot, the one that didn't blink, in the same direction as the two black figures seemed to be. I tried to estimate the possible distance on the map from the city, and they were really far away. I could see them from a 20th floor, which gave me a huge advantage in city visualization. Suddenly, that screech.
I don't know what I'm looking at because it looks like it's like shadows malforming, and then it looks like it could either be separating from him or it could be trying to combine or entangle him.
Similar to an alarm, shook the mobile again. But this time, a text balloon appeared above the map, with the following phrase: initialization of extraction. From that moment, I don't remember anything else. It was as if I had fallen asleep without noticing the signals from my own body, or not even really like that
Did you get
sensation.
kidnapped?
I simply felt myself fading away, and in a brief
With this image, I feel like he got kidnapped by some aliens.
lapse of time, I found myself lying in a hospital ward, but only for a moment, until everything went black again and time passed very, very slowly there. It felt like an eternity in a dream that seemed as dull and static as a turned-off screen. When I regained consciousness, I saw my parents and my sister surrounding me. I was still in the hospital, and they were looking at me with tears in their eyes. I didn't know why they weren't happy to see me. In fact, they covered their eyes and kept lamenting. It was difficult to understand what had happened to me, as well as to reintegrate into the world. After a few weeks, one of the doctors provided me with a large mirror, where they hoped I would be able to process my accident. I didn't know what to think. I didn't understand anything, until I saw it. I saw myself covered in metal amalgams, which covered half of my face, my entire left arm, part of my abdomen, and my right leg up to the ankle. I was lying there with my body partially paralyzed, in a state impossible to understand. I can only say,
So, did they turn him into a cyborg? Because that's what it sounds like the way he's describing it, and it looks here, as if they they turned him into a cyborg of sorts, but at the same time, it's like his flesh was also torn and charred, meaning it didn't really work.
and I still don't fully understand it, that parts of my body transformed into tissues of heavy metal alloys, as if it were some kind of biomechanical casing. However, this seemed to have no usefulness at all, as much of it began to rust upon contact with my blood, making it even a danger to myself.
Yeah, see, so they
Here
had
I
no idea
am,
what they were actually
still trying to understand what I am and what I have become, and most importantly, why this happened to me. For now, I will wait for the arrival of a very famous specialist who believes he has the answer, a certain Jacques Alain Miller.
just tied it into the real series. If you don't know what the real series is, it's supposed to tie in I'll just keep it on this. It's supposed to tie in the emphasis of your imagination, and if people believe hard enough, you can create a tulpa, which is basically just a monster, a ghost, basically that. And so they're believing that this definition of real can only be seen by certain people in certain spectrums. So the fact they're tying it in now is concerning because the real is like, let's say they showed the case of infants. The infants can see these imaginations and different things that we cannot because their eyes are not used to this world and they don't see it. They're seeing the world as it should be, basically. And our imagination is what we use to block out the real of the world. And now they're tying it in with this man who gets abducted and now turned into a cyborg, which will be interesting to see how they go with this. But it's gonna be messy and weird because they tried to force a woman into this real real version of the world, and she got her face torn off. So I don't know. This series is interesting. Actually, hold on. There's probably more, unless I don't think there is. Maybe. Okay, no. So yeah, that's interesting. If you haven't seen the real series, I recommend watching them because they're kind of cool, but at the same time, um, I don't know. They're very long and just documentary style. So if you're not a fan of that, I can understand it. But have a good day, good night, or a good afternoon. I'll see you in the next one.